Hi guys, Totallydubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the Philips 329P9H. Now this is a 4K monitor that has a USB-C port input and also has a pop-up webcam alongside a three-side borderless design. Now the monitor is very expensive. It can be found for around £800 in the UK, whilst in the US it's around $800. That's a lot of money to spend on essentially a 4K monitor. So running you through the specs, this has an IPS panel, has a 31.5 inch panel size. It has 4K resolution, so that's 3840 times 2160, which runs at 60 Hz. It has a 16:9 aspect ratio, a quoted response time of 5 milliseconds. Other than that, in terms of inputs and outputs, it's got DisplayPort input and also got a DisplayPort, a sort of a daisy chaining that you can have on it. It's got two HDMI 2.0 ports and USB 3.1 Gen 2, which also supports up to 65 watts of power. So therefore you can connect this monitor up to your power source and then via USB-C cable to your laptop and then provide charge to it, which can be very handy if you have, let's say, a MacBook or a Dell laptop as such. Other than that, in terms of USBs, you've got 4 USB ports, so USB Type A ports on the left-hand side bottom of the monitor. And also you've got an Ethernet LAN, so therefore you can use it if you have a certain business solution. You can plug it directly in to that, so therefore that USB-C can then carry over a internet connection as well with it. In terms of audio, you've got a 3.5mm jack input/output. You do also have built-in speakers, 2 3-watt speakers. Now these speakers are pretty poor in terms of the grand scheme of things, but for Windows notifications and what have you, it'll be absolutely acceptable. Now, other than that, if there's anything I've missed, make sure you do check down in the links in the description below because you will see all the full specs, including dimensions, the weight of it, and whatever that you might want to find out about the monitor that I might have missed. Now let's talk about the build quality and design. That's something that Philips are kind of banging on about in terms of how this monitor is special at 4K resolution. And I can see where they're coming from, because it's got pretty much a four-sided or almost a complete borderless design. There is obviously a small little bezel around the sides to keep the monitor in place, but really it is very nice to see. And even though it's 31.5 inch monitor, it pretty much seems and looks almost like my 27-inch monitor with pretty thick bezels. So I quite like that. I even like the fact that Philips have like a stowaway Philips sign, which means you can even have an even more less intrusive type of design. Now at the top you've got a pop-up camera. Now the pop-up camera itself goes up and then goes down and then kind of clicks into place. So this is quite good in terms of security, in terms of having your own security in a workplace or at home. And then obviously if you do want the webcam, you can put it up. Now the webcam does support Windows Hello, so therefore you can use it to sign on to your computer or your laptop or whatever have you. So it's useful to have. However, in terms of quality of that, I'll get into that in just a bit. Now, in terms of the stand itself, it provides every sort of adjustment you'd want, and it's pretty much got the sort of famous Philips stand, which is very sturdy. It's made out of plastic, but it's a very durable plastic and provides a right support for a monitor that's fitting for it. So in terms of build quality and design, I'll say I haven't got really that many complaints. I do have a problem with the cable that's included. Now for the webcam to be used, you need a USB-C to USB-A cable. Now the one that's included is honestly really short, as you can see in my hand. I had to stretch my computer and move the monitor completely off the desk, essentially to have it plugged into my PC. This should have been a really longer cable. It feels like this is mainly designed for laptop users, and to be honest, as a PC monitor, I just don't adhere or just don't accept that. Now, another complaint is also something that might be of a bigger concern for people who have businesses rather than like consumers like myself, is the kettle plug. Now, normal kettle plugs looks like this. They just have a flat sort of design all the way through. However, this little thing has a plastic bit which sits over here. Now, that might seem really stupid or really trivial to bring up, but if you need to replace the cable, you have to buy a specific kettle plug with that little plastic insert, which seems utterly ridiculous because why should this monitor be different in terms of its connectivity? So there might be reasons behind it, and Philips might have some sort of reasoning and logic behind it, but all I can see is just kind of like a proprietary type of connector, which really doesn't seem logical whatsoever. Why not just stick to a normal 3-pin kettle plug connector? I have no idea. So anyway, with that out of the way, let's talk about the webcam. Now the webcam is something that Philips talk about as being something special, and in quite all honesty, it is absolutely average and poor at least. Now you can see my ugly mug there in front of you. It doesn't really show great on the camera, but regardless, the quality that you're getting from this 2 megapixel sensor is pretty poor. You're going to lose a lot of detail around. It looks kind of like a painting in some sorts, and there's a lot of noise that occurs around darker areas. So I was in a really bright sunlit room over here, as I am right now, and you can see that the details over here aren't really good. In terms of video, in terms of audio quality, I'm just going to play this video which I'd recorded so you can hear the actual microphones. I actually need to switch on my amplifier so you guys can hear that. But the video quality itself isn't that good, and in terms of the actual audio quality that you get from the microphones, again, it's nothing that special either. So here we go. Testing with a USB microphone coming from the camera. I'm sat about, I don't know, 40-50 centimeters away. I'm just going to continue to talk and do a little box motion because, yeah, that's what we like to see. Anyway, obviously I was having a lot of fun doing that little video, but all I was just trying to show there is the actual microphone quality you get from the webcam, the built-in webcam, the 2 microphones which are built over here. Yes, they do give us sort of stereo output, but really, in all honesty, it's nothing to be shouting about. So the webcam, honestly, you'd be better off with a £40 webcam or a £20 webcam from Amazon or eBay or wherever you want to buy it from, and it will give you better audio quality. Of course, it won't look as sleek as this, but nevertheless, worth considering. Now let's talk about the image quality, and for me this is really where I was looking out for, because it's very important to have good image quality. And I must say, out the box with the sRGB standard through the sRGB selected through the OSD, you get an average delta of 0.68 with a maximum of 1.7. As you can see, it's absolutely amazing across the board. So it is calibrated to the sRGB standard. In terms of the contrast ratio, 1100 to 1 is perfectly acceptable for an IPS display, and of course you've got fantastic viewing angles no matter how you look at the monitor. And in terms of overall brightness, it's a little bit disappointing at 320 candela square. So to me, it's good, but the problem is over here that you could get a HDR monitor, and I would have really liked a sort of HDR 600 standard, so a 600 sort of nits rather than the 320 that we get over here. To me, that would have really kind of pushed it for video editors and pro-level editors who really want to use a HDR monitor. And in this respect, it's got no HDR certification, it doesn't support HDR, and at 320 nits, it's not exactly the brightest screen in the world. It's absolutely fine in a bright sunlit room, but it's not something that you should really be, again, using for HDR editing. Now in terms of brightness uniformity, there is a little bit of variance on the top left and the top right. It's not perfect across the board, and for an £800 4K monitor, I would very much expect that to be the case. Even though we're not talking pro level grade monitor over here, still a little bit disappointing to see that, because some gaming monitors, let alone consumer-led 4K monitors like this, have better brightness uniformity across the board. Now, calibrator aside, looking at the actual image myself, I must say that the monitor does produce a very nice image. I have no problems with the contrast ratio, the color accuracy, and there's no sort of washed out tone that you might get with certain VA panels. So here this IPS panel really does shine through, and in terms of just your normal average Joe looking at it and not sort of professionally editing or video editing or whatever it might be, I think it's absolutely acceptable. But again, here we're talking about an £800 plus monitor, and I would expect a little bit more. I was also disappointed to find in the OSD not to find any sort of pre-calibrated Adobe RGB or DCI-P3 modes. Instead, you've got power sensor, light sensor, which are useful for making sure that you don't spend too much time in front of the computer, and a low blue mode as well. But other than that, you can see the picture settings. You've just got picture contrast, sharpness and smart response, PIP and PBB mode, audio, which is the built-in audio, and the color temperature settings and sRGB, and of course user defined. Other than that, it's nothing special. In terms of accessing the OSD, there's a set of buttons at the back and they're pretty annoying. Now the biggest thing for me, more than anything about this monitor, is that this had actually a problem. It actually can be quite hard to see, but when I actually looked at some reviews on Amazon, what I found is that a user was actually complaining about the exact same problem. Now, of course, with my basic editing skills, you'll be able to see this right now. It's a line which goes across the right-hand side of the monitor, and as I said before, it's something that an Amazon buyer found as well in 2 models of their Philips panel. I'm not in the US, I'm in the UK, and this would have come out the EU pool, so it seems to be a more widespread problem than just what this Amazon buyer in the US has found. And I'm not really sure at the reasoning behind it or the sort of logic behind it, but all I can say is that I also experienced the problem. I do want to mention one more thing, and that is the actual gaming response. Now, this isn't a gaming monitor to say the least. It's not something that you should use for gaming at 60 Hz and 4K. But I should comment on it, and the reason I should comment on it is because, you know, if you want to test out games, if you're developing games or whatever. Now, in this respect, the 60 Hz panel is, you know, a low refresh rate monitor. It's not going to be great for faster paced games. And in terms of the input lag and the actual response time monitor, it's nothing really impressive, especially with the smart response tuned up to the maximum mode. You do notice a little bit of overshoot ghosting. So in this respect, it's not a gaming monitor to say the least. Of course, you can play games with any monitor, whatever have you, but it's not a monitor I would personally choose when it comes to gaming. So this brings me on to my verdict, and the thing that I really want to talk about is really that price tag, that £810 price tag, which to me, for what you're getting, is pretty ridiculous. Now, normally I would be really absolutely angry of finding a fault on the side of a monitor, but all I can say is that, you know, it's panel lottery really, because it comes out of the manufacturing branch. But then when I go and look at Amazon, I find one buyer who's found the same problem twice, and then me, a reviewer in the UK, to have the same problem as well, makes me think a little bit more about the actual panel that you're getting and the amount of money you're paying and for what you're actually going to be expecting to get. Personally, at £810, I expect pretty much perfection for a 4K monitor. It's not 5K, it's not perfectly suitable for the Adobe and DCI-P3 standards, and it doesn't have any pre-calibrated modes in that respect. So it's actually, to be honest with you, an overpriced monitor that has a few nice features in there. So overall, all I'm trying to say over here is this monitor is really grossly overpriced. I just don't see the point in spending this much amount of money on a 4K monitor. I can't see myself ever recommending it. I can see that this monitor line seems to have a set of faults behind it, and in terms of its features and functionalities, yes, they're present, but they're nothing amazing. They're nothing to shout about and say, hey, you know, actually what, built-in speakers are amazing, or the video quality from the camera is great. So there we go, guys. That's been my honest, independent, unbiased review. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you have, make sure you give it a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and favorite and share, as it'll always help the channel grow. Don't forget to check out in the links in the description below for my suggestions, alternatives to this monitor. Alright guys, I've been TotallyDubbed. Take care and bye bye.